Night shifts always felt quieter than they should have been. Not peaceful, just empty. The kind of silence that presses against your ears until you start hearing things that probably aren't there. I remember my first overnight job. Sitting behind a glass counter while the world outside faded into fog and streetlights hummed like tired insects. Midnight changed everything. Cars stopped passing. Windows turned into mirrors. Even time itself felt slower, like it didn't want to move forward with me awake. Most people think night workers get used to loneliness. The truth is you don't. You just learn to ignore the feeling that someone might be standing just outside the light, waiting for you to notice them. Every building has its own sounds after dark. Vents breathing, floors settling, distant doors clicking when no one is scheduled to be there. I used to count hours by small rituals. Coffee refills, security rounds, watching shadows stretch across empty hallways. But one night, sometime around 3:17 a.m., something changed. The security cameras flickered, only for a second, just long enough for me to see a figure standing in a place I had checked moments before. No badge, no reflection, just someone watching. I told myself it was fatigue. Night shift hallucinations. That's what everyone calls them. But then the phone rang behind me, and the voice on the line whispered my name from inside the building. That was the first time I realized something about night shifts no one warns you about. Some strangers don't arrive through the front door. My first night as a security guard began in late autumn. The air outside the office complex felt thin and cold, carrying the faint smell of wet concrete and fallen leaves. The parking lot stretched wide and empty under pale streetlights. No cars, no voices, just rows of dark windows watching me arrive. Night shifts always feel like stepping into a place after everyone else has stopped believing it exists. I pushed through the glass entrance at 10:57 p.m. The lobby lights hummed softly overhead. Reception desks stood abandoned, chairs tucked in too neatly, as if people had left in a hurry but wanted to appear organized. My footsteps echoed farther than they should have. Security training said silence meant safety, but silence also meant I could hear everything. The supervisor had already gone home. My uniform still smelled new. My badge felt heavier than expected as I walked toward the security office to clock in. The digital attendant's terminal glowed blue against the dark wall. I typed my employee number. The screen paused. Then a message appeared. Shift already active. I stared at it longer than I should have. Below my name was a timestamp. 10:12 p.m. 45 minutes before I arrived. I checked the hallway behind me, half expecting someone to wave or explain the mistake. Nothing moved, only the faint vibration of ventilation drifting through the ceiling. Maybe someone tested the system earlier. That's what I told myself. I reset the log and started my shift anyway. My patrol route covered 6 floors. Long corridors, glass offices, conference rooms filled with sleeping computers blinking faint green lights. The building felt awake in a mechanical way, like it was breathing without people inside it. On the second floor, something strange happened. The lights turned on ahead of me, one by one, soft clicks traveling down the hallway before I reached it. I stopped walking. The motion sensors were supposed to react when I entered a space, not before. The corridor waited for me, fully lit. I laughed quietly under my breath. New job nerves, old wiring, easy explanations. Still, I slowed my steps. The air felt warmer where the lights had already switched on, as if someone had passed through moments earlier. Back in the security room, I checked the camera monitors. 12 screens stacked in pale blue rows, each showing a different floor. Empty desks, closed doors, still elevators, except one monitor. Camera 4, second floor hallway. Movement replayed automatically in a small window. I watched myself appear on screen, started my patrol, but something felt wrong. The timestamp read 10:41 p.m. I hadn't even entered the building yet. The recording showed a guard walking the exact path I would take minutes later. Same uniform, same posture, same slow inspection of doors. The figure moved calmly, professionally, like someone who already knew the route. I leaned closer to the monitor. The camera angle never showed his face, only the back of his head, only the rhythm of footsteps I somehow recognized. The footage ended with a guard turning a corner, disappearing seconds before my real patrol began. My reflection stared back at me through the glass of the screen. For a moment, I wondered if I had forgotten arriving earlier. Fatigue does strange things during night shifts, but I remembered driving here. I remembered unlocking the door. I remembered being alone. I continued patrols anyway. That's what security work teaches you. Routine before panic. 3rd floor. Lights flicked on before I reached them again. 4th floor. A door swung slightly, settling as if someone had just let go. I checked every room. Empty, always empty. Yet the building felt occupied in a quiet, patient way. Like I was following someone who stayed just out of sight. Around 1:30 a.m., I returned to cameras. More recordings had appeared. Short clips automatically saved by motion detection. Each one showed the same guard. Walking ahead of me. Always ahead. Opening doors I would check minutes later. Pausing at intersections where I would eventually stop. It wasn't random movement. It was my shift happening before I lived it. My stomach tightened. I checked live footage of the hallway outside the security office. Nothing. Then I opened playback from 5 minutes earlier. There he was again, standing outside my door, perfectly still, as if listening. The timestamp showed 1:24 a.m. I hadn't left the room at that time. The figure tilted his head slightly toward the camera, toward me, and then walked away. I rushed into the hallway. The air felt cold enough to sting my lungs. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. No footsteps. No closing doors. Only silence stretching too far in every direction. I walked the corridor quickly, checking corners, stairwells, storage rooms. Nothing. No one. But when I returned to the security office, another motion alert blinked on the monitor. Camera 4 again. I watched the recording. The guard entered the security room, sat in my chair, and faced the camera. The image blurred slightly, but I knew. Same shoulders, same uniform crease, same badge position. It was me, only older somehow, tired. Still, he looked directly into the lens, as if aware someone would eventually watch. Then he reached forward and typed something into the attendance terminal beside him. The recording ended. I turned slowly toward the real terminal next to me. The screen refreshed on its own. A new entry appeared beneath my name. Shift completed. 6 a.m. My breath fogged the air even though the room was warm. I checked the time. 2:03 a.m. For hours still remained. Outside the security office, lights began switching on down the hallway, one after another, moving away from me, like someone continuing patrol, finishing the shift early. I stayed in my chair for the rest of the night, watching empty screens and listening to footsteps that never quite reached the door. Morning eventually came. Employees arrived. Voices returned. Sunlight softened the building. Everything looked normal again. But when I clocked out, the terminal hesitated, then displayed a message. Welcome back. I never worked another night there. Yet sometimes when I wake suddenly before dawn, I feel certain of something. Some version of me is still inside that building, walking quiet hallways, clocked in long before I arrive, and still finishing shifts I never remember starting. The hotel lobby was always too bright at night. White lights, clean floors, soft music that sounded like it was playing just to prove the place was still alive. But the silence underneath it never went away. It followed me behind the front desk like a shadow that didn't belong to anyone. My shift started at 11 p.m. Same routine every night. Check reservations, print receipts, watch the elevator doors like they might open wrong. That night, room 214 was already marked as occupied. Again, I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Occupied. No checkout time. It had been the same for 4 nights straight. But no guest ever came to the desk. No luggage. No noise. No one walking through the lobby. I checked the system logs. No new check-ins. No extensions. Just room 214, staying active like it was refusing to end its stay. Around midnight, housekeeping passed through the hallway behind me. 2 workers. Tired voices. Rolling carts with stiff wheels. They stopped near the corridor, leading to 214. I heard one of them whisper, "I'm not going in there again." The other didn't argue, just a quiet shake of the head. That was enough for me to notice. I leaned slightly out from behind the desk. "What's wrong with that room?" I asked. They both looked at me, too quickly, like they didn't expect anyone to say it out loud. "Nothing," one of them said, but they didn't move past the hallway. They cleaned every room except 214, then left early. At 3:03 a.m., the desk phone rang. Sharp, sudden, too loud for the empty lobby. I answered before thinking. Front desk. Static, then breathing. Slow, calm, not heavy, not rushed, just present. Then a voice. "My room is still not quiet." I checked the system again. Room 214. Still occupied. "Can I help you to check out?" I asked softly. A pause. Then the voice replied. "I never checked in." The line clicked off, but the phone stayed warm in my hand. I took the key for 214. Policy said we should never enter occupied rooms without request. But policy also didn't explain breathing on phone lines. The hallway felt longer than before. The carpet too soft under my shoes. Room numbers passing slowly. The door looked normal. Too normal. I swiped the key card. Green light. Lock clicked. But the door didn't open fully at first. Like something behind it was holding it in place. I pushed gently. It gave way. The room was dark. Air still. Curtains slightly moving even though the window was closed. And the bed looked warm. Not messy. Not used. Just recently touched. Like someone had stood up seconds ago. I stepped inside carefully. The air smelled faintly of soap and something older underneath it. Not decay, just time. The bathroom light flickered once, then stayed on, empty, no water running, no mirrors fogged. I checked under the bed. Nothing. Closets empty. Everything perfect in a way that felt staged, like a room waiting for someone who would never arrive. Then I noticed a phone on the nightstand. It rang once, stopped, rang again. I didn't touch it. On the third ring, I answered. Silence at first, then the same voice. Closer now. "I am still here." I turned toward the bed. The sheets moved slightly, not like wind, like weight shifting out of them. But nothing was there. Still, empty. Yet the impression remained. Someone had just stood up and was still deciding whether to leave. I backed out of the room slowly. The door closed behind me on its own. No slam, just a soft click, like a polite ending. At the front desk again, room 214 still showed occupied. No change, no record of entry, no update, only a stay that refused to end. At sunrise, housekeeping arrived again. I told them about the room. They didn't respond. One of them just placed a new key card on the counter. "Don't reassign it," she said quietly, then walked away. The system still showed 214 as occupied, even after checkout time passed. Even after the building woke up. Some rooms don't leave the system. They just stay, like they're waiting for someone who never learned how to leave either. The highway station was always empty after 2 a.m., just flickering lights, dust on the glass doors, the soft hum of refrigerators that never felt fully awake. I worked the night shift alone. Most nights, nothing happened until he started coming. Same time, same pace. No car. He would walk in like he had always been there. Quiet, polite, dressed too neatly for a roadside stop. "Coffee," he would say. No sugar, no milk, just coffee. He never paid differently, never stayed long. But I never saw him arrive or leave. The first time I noticed something wrong was the footprints. Outside the station, after his visit, I checked the parking lot. Wet ground from earlier rain, but only partial prints. Halfway across the lot, stopping suddenly, as if he had stepped out of nowhere or stepped back into it. I followed them once. They ended in the middle of the asphalt. No direction, no continuation. Just stopping like someone had been erased mid-walk. He started asking questions after that. Small ones. "Do you close on time? Do you ever leave early? Does anyone come here after you?" Always the same tone. Calm, careful, like he was collecting answers instead of conversation. I answered less each night, but he kept returning. Same cup, same order, same silence afterward. He would sit by the window, even though there was nothing to see outside but darkness and the empty road. One night, I locked the doors at closing time, turned off the lights, counted the register, everything normal. Then I saw him outside, standing just beyond the glass. No car, no sound, just watching. I froze. He tilted his head slightly, like he was waiting for permission. Then he stepped closer. The glass door didn't open, but the reflection changed. Inside the glass, I saw him standing behind me. But when I turned around, nothing, only empty aisles, cold air, and the hum of refrigerators still working long after they should have stopped. The next morning, I checked security footage. He arrived at 2:11 a.m., walked in, ordered coffee, sat down. Then the footage glitched for exactly 3 seconds. When it returned, he was already gone, but the coffee cup was still full, untouched, steaming slightly, like someone had just left it there, or never finished becoming visible in the first place. The hospital at night felt like a different building. Daytime was noise, movement, life. Night was corridors that stretched too long, lights that buzzed too softly, and elevators that always felt like they were arriving from somewhere else. I worked the operator desk, mostly transfers, alerts, internal calls, nothing unusual, until extension 0 started ringing. At first, I thought it was a system error. No extension 0 existed. I checked the directory. Nothing. Still, the call came through, static first. Then a voice, soft, careful. I think I am in the wrong wing. I looked at the floor map. That wing was under renovation. No power, no staff access. I told him that. The voice paused, then replied, "But the lights are on." I checked the system logs. Power confirmed off. Still no access allowed. The calls kept coming. Same extension, same voice, each time describing more detail. Hallways with peeling paint, doors without labels, soft footsteps echoing behind them, always calm, never panicked, like they were walking through memory instead of space. Security confirmed no one could be there, but the voice kept describing things correctly, things that didn't match reality, yet felt familiar. One night, I asked who they were. The line went silent. Then, "I used to visit people here." Pause. "I think I still do." The call disconnected. After that, I checked the unused wing myself. Flashlight in hand. Doors locked. Air cold. Too cold. No power should have been there. But the emergency exit sign flickered faintly anyway. At the end of the corridor, I heard something like breathing. Not behind me. Not ahead. Just everywhere at once. I didn't continue. I left before deciding what I might find if I stayed. The next morning, the system showed one final log from extension 0. No timestamp, no origin, just a message. "Are visitors allowed after death?" Then the system cleared itself, like it never needed to remember the question. Only I did. The warehouse was supposed to be empty at night. That was the rule. Machines off, gates locked, only security left inside to make sure nothing moved when it shouldn't. But movement still happened. Just not in ways I could explain. I first saw him around 1:10 a.m., a man in a plain gray uniform. No badge, no sound. He was cleaning aisle 7. The strange part was it was already clean, floors polished, shelves aligned, no dust even under the lights. Still, he kept wiping surfaces that didn't need it, slow, careful, repeating motions like he was following instructions only he could see. I approached him. "Hey!" I called softly. He didn't turn, didn't react at all, just continued cleaning, like I wasn't there. I checked the staff log. No cleaners scheduled, no overnight maintenance, nothing. I radioed the supervisor. "No one should be inside," they said, but I was looking at him, standing right in front of me, yet somehow still not confirmed by the system. At 2:40 a.m., I walked the upper floor. The warehouse stretched endlessly in rows of stacked boxes and cold metal shelves. The air smelled faintly of cardboard and dust. But every time I turned a corner, he was there again, cleaning a different section, always silent, always alone, always acting like I had already passed him earlier. I started timing his movement. He didn't walk like a normal person. No hesitation, no wasted motion. It was as if the warehouse itself was telling him where to go, and he just followed. Then I checked time cards. Every worker logs in and out through a digital panel. His name wasn't there. Not missing, not incorrect, just absent, like he had never been added at all. Around 3:15 a.m., I followed him more closely. He stopped at a storage wall, just stood there, facing it. I waited. Nothing moved. Then he lifted his hand and pressed it against the metal. No sound, no alarm, just stillness. Then his arm slowly sank into the wall, like the surface forgot it was solid. I stepped back immediately. My breath felt too loud, too real, but he didn't react. He simply continued moving forward, into the wall, until only his back remained. Then nothing. The warehouse wall looked untouched. Clean, normal, like nothing had ever passed through it. The convenience store looked smaller at night. The glass windows reflected more darkness than light. Inside, everything hummed softly. Coolers, lights, the old air conditioner struggling to stay awake. My shift always felt like waiting for something that never arrived. Until deliveries started coming at 3:03 a.m. The first one came without warning. A truck I never saw pull in. No headlights. No engine sound. Just suddenly, boxes at the back door, stacked neatly, each labeled with tomorrow's date. I checked the invoice. No supplier matched it. No order placed. Still, everything was signed. My name was even on the receiving log. But I never signed anything. Inside the boxes were items we didn't stock yet. New snacks. New drinks. Even seasonal products that hadn't been released. I checked the register system. Those exact items would be requested later that same day by real customers, before they even existed on the shelves. The second delivery was worse, because one box had my name on it, printed clearly, no address, no sender, just for the night shift worker. I didn't open it right away. I left it behind the counter, watched it, listened to it, as if it might change shape if I stopped paying attention. At 3:03 a.m. again, another delivery arrived. Same silence, same impossible timing. But this time, I saw something. A figure standing near the truck. Not the driver, not a worker, just someone watching. When I turned toward the door, they were gone, but the box count had increased. Without movement, without sound, I finally opened my box. Inside was a clipboard, old, used. Attached to it was a single sheet of paper, a schedule, my shift schedule, but not the current one. Future dates, all filled in, all signed. At the bottom, one line stood out. Final delivery, not yet received. I looked up. The back door was open. Cold air drifted in, but there was no truck, no streetlight, no sound outside the parking lot. Only the feeling that something had dropped something off and was still waiting for it to be noticed. The building had 12 floors. Everyone knew that. It was printed on signs. Buttons, emergency maps, 12 floors. Nothing more. But the elevator didn't agree. It started on my third night shift. I stepped into the elevator to check levels. Pressed 12. The doors closed. Normal hum. Then a soft stop. The panel flickered, and a new button lit up. I didn't press it. The elevator moved anyway. The doors opened slowly. Cold air spilled out. Not air-conditioned cold. Something older. Still, like the building had stopped breathing in that direction. The hallway outside was dim. Too long. Too quiet. And faint voices echoed from somewhere down it. Not loud. Not urgent. Just present. Like people talking in another version of the building. I stepped out for only a second. No doors labeled. No exit signs. Just identical corridors repeating too far into darkness. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Slow. Careful. A man stepped into view. He looked confused. Lost. He smiled faintly. "I think I'm early," he said. I didn't answer. He glanced around, then toward the elevator. "I'll wait for the right floor," he added, and stepped inside. The doors closed immediately. When I checked the elevator log later, there was no record of 13. No stop, no movement, nothing. But every time I used the elevator after that, I felt it hesitate, like it remembered something I hadn't experienced yet. The library after midnight felt like a different kind of silence. Not empty, just paused. Books lined up like quiet witnesses under pale desk lamps. Even the air smelled older. Paper, dust, time. I was the only staff member on night duty. Or I thought I was. It started with pages turning. Soft, slow, somewhere between aisles. I checked the shelves. Nothing moved, but the sound continued, like reading without hands. Returned books began changing. I noticed it during routine sorting. Notes in side margins. Handwriting I didn't recognize. Predicting small things. A coffee spill. A late arrival. A broken lamp. Things that hadn't happened yet, but did, exactly as written. Then I saw him. A visitor seated at a table near the back. Reading. No library card. No bag. No phone. Just turning pages slowly. He didn't cast a shadow. Not under the desk lamp. Not on the floor. Nothing. I approached carefully. "Do you need help finding something?" I asked. He didn't look up. "I'm looking for books that haven't been written yet," he said calmly. I paused. "That's not possible." He finally glanced at me and smiled slightly. "I know," he replied, then closed the book and disappeared. Not quickly, not dramatically, just gone between one blink and the next. The chair stayed warm. Even after I touched it, the mall was always dead at night. Shutters down, lights dim, escalators frozen mid-step. I watched it from the security room, mostly for routine, mostly to stay awake. But camera 4 never behaved normally. It showed movement where nothing should be. Always the same woman, walking the same path. Every hour. Exactly. No variation. No stopping. At first, I thought it was a loop error. But then I noticed something wrong. Her reflection didn't match her. Sometimes it walked slower. Sometimes it stood still while she moved. Sometimes it waved first, before she did. I checked playback carefully. On the 4th loop, she stopped, looked directly at the camera, at me, then raised her hand, and waved exactly where I was sitting. I froze. The live feed showed the empty mall again. No movement, no woman, just silence. But the playback still showed her waiting, as if she knew I would eventually look long enough, as if the camera wasn't recording her, but allowing her to appear. The dispatch room always felt colder after midnight, not because of the air conditioning, but because of the silence between calls. Radios that stopped speaking, screens that glowed without reason, a desk that always looked slightly too clean, like no one wanted to leave fingerprint behind. I worked the overnight shift alone. Most nights were nothing, just missed calls, canceled rides, sleeping drivers on standby, until the request stopped making sense. It began at 2:58 a.m. A ride request came through the system. Pickup location, an abandoned street address. No house lights, no active listing, just a place that had been empty for years. I assumed it was a glitch. I canceled it. Then another came, different address. Same result, no driver accepted. The system kept pushing requests through like it was insisting someone needed to go there anyway. I checked the logs. All normal, except the timestamps. They were slightly off, always a few minutes ahead of current time, as if the requests were arriving from the future. At 3:12 a.m., I got my first live complaint from a driver. He just disappeared. Static filled the call, then silence. I checked the trip record. Pickup completed. Drop-off never logged. Location ended mid-highway. No crash report. No signal loss. Just nothing after a certain point. More drivers refused after that. They started calling in before even reaching pickup locations. I'm not going there. I don't know what that place is. I saw someone standing there, but there was no road. Each report felt the same. Confusion first, then silence, then cancellation. The strangest request came at 3:03 a.m., exactly on time. Pickup location, my home address. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. The system never had my personal address, never stored it, never needed it. Yet there it was, fully correct, down to the unit number. I tried to cancel it. The button didn't respond. The request stayed active, waiting, like it already knew I was reading it. I called the emergency driver line. No answer, only static, then a soft automated voice. Driver assigned. I checked the map. No driver name, no vehicle ID, just movement, approaching the pickup location. My home. I stepped outside the dispatch room. The parking lot was empty, too still, no wind, no distant traffic, just streetlights buzzing faintly above asphalt that looked darker than usual. I checked my phone. The ride was still active. Distance, 0.3 kilometers. Approaching. Then I saw headlights. But no car. Only light moving across the ground like something invisible was driving through it. The light stopped in front of the building. Engine sound, but not quite. More like an idea of an engine. Doors opened. No one exited. My phone pinged. Passenger arrived. I looked at the screen. Pickup confirmed. But there was no driver. No vehicle. Just empty space where something was waiting. Then the voice came through the dispatch speaker behind me. Calm. Close. Already inside the room. Are you ready to go? I turned slowly. No one was there, but the chair beside mine had shifted slightly, like someone had just sat down. I checked the system again. The ride request had changed. Now it read, destination unknown, fare in progress. The meter started counting, even though no ride had begun. Outside, the headlights remained still, waiting, and the silence in the room felt heavier now, like the building itself had decided the shift was no longer mine to end. The clinic was never fully asleep. Even at night, the walls held a soft, tired hum from machines that should have been silent. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to make every shadow feel uncertain. I worked the night reception desk, mostly paperwork, occasional walk-ins, emergency calls that never lasted long, until he arrived. He was already sitting in the waiting room when I checked the register. No entry record, no check-in slip, just there, still, hands folded neatly in his lap, staring at the floor like he was waiting for something that had already been delayed too long. I called out softly, "Do you need a register?" He looked up slowly and shook his head. "No," he said, "I already did that." I checked the system again. Nothing. He didn't ask for treatment, didn't ask for a doctor, only for reassurance. "I just want to know I'm still allowed to wait here," he said quietly. The way he said it felt wrong. Like, allowed wasn't a medical question, but something else entirely. I tried to find his file. Name search. ID search. Nothing matched. Then I checked incident logs. A record appeared. His name. Marked. Deceased. Time of death. Earlier today. I froze. Looked up. He was still sitting there, breathing gently, real enough that I could hear it. I stepped into the waiting room. "Sir," I said carefully, "there's no record of..." He interrupted softly. "I know." Silence stretched between us. The room felt colder than before. Not physically, but like the air had lost permission to be warm. "I just didn't want to leave without saying I was here," he added. I didn't respond. I couldn't find the right words for something that wasn't supposed to be happening. At 4:10 a.m., I checked again. The chair was empty, but still warm, slightly bent inward, like someone had stood up slowly, not rushed, not gone, just finished. By sunrise, the chair rocked once on its own, then stopped, like it had remembered someone sitting there, and decided not to forget. The building lights always acted strange after midnight. Some floors brightened on their own. Others dimmed without reason. Maintenance said it was old wiring. I wasn't convinced, because the patterns felt intentional, like something was moving through the system, fixing things in the wrong order. I was assigned night technician duty, mostly checking light panels, resetting circuits, logging outages that never matched the morning reports. Everything should have been simple, but it never stayed that way. At 1:45 a.m., I noticed the first repair. A hallway light that had been broken for weeks was suddenly working. Perfectly. Clean glow. No flicker. No record of repair. I checked the maintenance logs. Nothing. Then another light. Then another. Each one I had previously reported as broken. Now fixed. Ahead of schedule. Before I even reached them, I walked the corridor, tools in hand. The building felt too aware of my movement, like it was adjusting itself to stay just ahead of me. At 2:30 a.m., I heard humming. Soft, low, behind the walls. Not electrical, not mechanical. Almost human, like someone remembering a tune instead of singing it. I followed it. The sound led me deeper into maintenance corridors I rarely used. The air grew warmer, then colder, then still. My tools disappeared from my belt at one point. I didn't notice immediately, but when I turned around, they were neatly placed on the floor, aligned, organized, like someone had corrected my habits. I whispered, "Is someone there?" No answer, only humming. Closer now, not behind walls anymore, inside them. At 3:11 a.m., I reached the main breaker room. The lights inside were already on, even though I hadn't touched the system. Every switch was neatly set, every panel perfectly adjusted, like someone had already finished my job. Then I saw the final switch, labeled, "Manual override, do not use." I hesitated, but the humming stopped. Silence followed immediately, heavy, expectant, like the building was watching what I would do next. I flipped it. Nothing exploded. Nothing changed, except the silence. It deepened, as if the building had exhaled and decided not to take another breath. Behind me, the humming returned, but now it was inside the room, not from walls, not from machines, from everywhere at once. The radio station was always warm at night, not temperature-wise, but alive in a strange way. Even when no one was broadcasting, the speakers still carried faint static like distant breathing. I hosted the overnight program alone. Music requests, late callers, empty conversations meant for no one awake enough to answer. The first call came at 12:07 a.m. No caller ID, just silence. Then a voice. "Play the next song." I checked the playlist. It wasn't scheduled yet, but I played it anyway. The caller hung up before the song started. At 12:22 a.m., another call. Same voice, same calm tone. "That one will be followed by rain tomorrow." I laughed softly. It's a clear forecast. No response. Just a click. The rain came the next day, exactly as said. After that, I stopped laughing. The calls continued every night, always predicting songs, always correct, always just ahead of the broadcast schedule, like someone listening from a version of time slightly forward. At 2:40 a.m., I checked broadcast logs. Something was wrong. The station had been transmitting the same frequency for decades, looping, but no record of ending, no record of starting, just continuous signal. I heard him again that night. "This station never sleeps," the voice said. I replied quietly, "Who are you?" A pause. Then, I never stopped listening. I checked the studio monitors. Empty hallway, empty booth, but the microphone light turned on, even though the system was off. I didn't speak, but the mic picked up something anyway. A breath, then silence, then the faint sound of someone smiling on the other side of a closed door. The aquarium was peaceful during the day. Bright water, slow-moving fish, visitors tapping glass with soft excitement. At night, everything changed. The water felt heavier. The lights dimmed in unnatural ways. And the tanks never fully stopped moving. I was the night caretaker, mostly checking filters, cleaning glass, ensuring systems stayed stable. But stability didn't feel real after closing hours. At 1:20 a.m., I heard tapping from inside a sealed tank. I checked the system. No mechanical activity. No fish movement capable of that rhythm. Still, the tapping continued. Slow, patient, like someone knocking from underwater. The surface of one tank rippled, but nothing touched it. No air, no vibration, just movement appearing from nowhere. Then I saw him, standing between the exhibits, watching the tanks, not touching anything, just observing like a guest who had never been told closing hours applied to him. I approached carefully. "Sir, we're closed," I said. He didn't look at me. "When does the ocean close?" he asked. I didn't answer, because the question didn't make sense. But it also felt like it already had an answer I didn't want to give. He moved closer to a large tank filled with deep water creatures. The lights inside shifted slightly, as if reacting to him, or recognizing him. At 2:50 a.m., he was gone. No exit sound, no door opening, just absence where presence had been seconds before. But in the morning light, I found wet footprints leading from the tanks, across the floor, straight to the exit, and then stopping, as if the ocean had stepped out for a moment and forgotten how to return. The terminal was empty after midnight. Benches cleaned too often, lights too bright for how quiet everything was. A place designed for movement that had already stopped happening. I worked the night desk, mostly waiting for buses that never came, until one arrived hours late. It rolled in without announcement. No engine sound, no horn, just presence. The doors opened slowly. But no one got off. The display board showed a route that didn't match anything in the system. No destination listed, only a date. Years ago. I stepped closer. The driver sat perfectly still, hands on the wheel, eyes forward, not blinking, not reacting, like the road still existed in front of him. Inside the bus, passengers sat in silence, all facing forward, not sleeping, not moving, just waiting. I checked their tickets. Each one was dated from different years, different times, none of them current, all of them past. I asked softly, "Where is this bus going?" No response, only stillness. Then I heard the engine, but it wasn't starting. It was stopping, like something had just decided the journey was over long after it ended. The doors closed on their own. No warning, no final glance. And the bus rolled away into the dark terminal road without headlights, without sound, like it was never meant to arrive in the first place, only to pass through time briefly before disappearing again. The terminal was never truly quiet. Even at night, it held echoes, faint announcements that no one was left to hear, lights buzzing like tired insects above empty benches. I worked the night desk at the bus station, mostly lost tickets, missed departures, drivers calling in sick. Nothing that should have kept me alert, but the silence always felt scheduled, like it was waiting for something that never arrived on time. It appeared just after 3:40 a.m. A bus, no announcement, no headlights sweeping across the lot, just suddenly there, parked at gate 7 like it had always belonged to that exact moment. The doors opened slowly. No engine shut off. No driver stepping out. Only silence inside. The interior lights were on. Rows of seats filled with passengers, all sitting perfectly still. No movement. No whispers. No turning heads, like they had been paused mid-ride. I stepped closer. The air felt colder near the door. Not outside cold. Inside cold, like the bus had brought its own winter with it. I checked the schedule board. No arrivals listed. No delays recorded. No route matching the vehicle. Just a blank gap where it should not exist. I looked at the driver's seat. A man sat there, hands on the wheel, eyes open, not blinking, not reacting, but not asleep either, like he was still watching a road that no longer existed. I asked softly, "Where did this come from?" No response, only the faint vibration of something deep inside the bus. Not an engine, something older, like memory trying to restart itself. Then the doors began to close, slowly, too slowly, like the bus was reconsidering whether it should stay or leave. I stepped back, but I saw something in the reflection of the glass. The passengers weren't all still anymore. Some had turned their heads, slightly, not toward the front, toward me. The doors shut. The bus pulled away without sound. No exhaust, no headlights, just movement through darkness that didn't react to it passing through. By morning, Gate 7 was empty again, but the camera footage showed something different. The bus arrived at 3:42 a.m., stayed exactly 2 minutes, and then left, but the timestamp kept running, as if it had never truly stopped existing. The lost property office was supposed to be simple. Keys, wallets, phones, umbrellas, things people forgot and eventually remembered. But at night, the objects felt heavier, like they were waiting to be claimed for reasons no one explained. The first item appeared at 1:05 a.m., a leather wallet, no intake form, no drop-off record, just sitting in the bin like it had always been there. Inside was an ID card, faded photo, name blurred, but the system matched it instantly. A missing person report from 2 years ago, still open, still unresolved. I checked the shelf again. Another item appeared, a wristwatch, still ticking, even though no battery had been replaced, even though it had been logged as destroyed months ago. At 2:10 a.m., a man entered. No appointment, no request slip, just standing in the doorway, looking around like he already knew where everything was kept. "I'm looking for something," he said quietly. I asked, "What?" He paused. "I don't remember anymore." He moved through the shelves carefully, not browsing, recognizing, like every object here belonged to him at some point, or still did. I checked his face against records. No match, yet the system hesitated when I scanned him, like it almost remembered him. At 3 a.m., he stopped at a box on the far shelf, didn't open it, just stared, then said, "That's mine." I checked the label. No name, no tag, only a blank sticker that had never been filled. I asked, "How do you know?" He smiled faintly. "I've been here before." Then he looked at me longer than necessary, like he recognized me too, before I had ever met him. When I turned back to the shelf, he was gone, but the box remained open, empty, except for a faint warmth still inside it, like something had just left, but wasn't finished deciding where to go next. The parking garage had 7 levels, but at night it felt like more, like the building added space when no one was counting. I worked security patrols there, walking loops, checking cameras, listening to echoes that always seemed slightly delayed. It started with footsteps, always behind me, never visible, always the same pace. Slow, careful, matching mine too perfectly to be random. I checked level 3. Nothing. Level 4. Nothing. But the footsteps never stopped. Just changed direction with me. Like something was following the pattern of my patrol instead of my position. At 1:30 a.m., I saw him. A man walking upward on the stairwell. Calm, steady, but never reaching the next level. Every time I checked the stairs again, he was still there. Mid-step, mid-rise, always moving, never arriving. I tried speaking. "Hey, you shouldn't be here." No response, not even a glance. Just continuing upward, like I wasn't part of the same space. Then I checked the mirrors. They didn't match the garage layout. Cars parked in different places. Stairs leading in directions that didn't exist. And in the reflection, I was already 1 level lower than I thought. At 2:45 a.m., I realized something. The footsteps weren't behind me. They were between levels, like something was walking in the space, separating floors. Not inside the garage, not outside it, but inside the structure itself. When I reached level 1 again, the man was standing at the top of the stairwell, looking down at me, finally still, and for the first time, I wasn't sure if he had been following me, or if I had been following him all along. The bakery smelled different at night, not like bread, more like memory, warm air, soft flour dust, the quiet rhythm of something being prepared long before anyone would ask for it. I worked overnight prep shifts, mostly cleaning trays, resetting ovens, checking inventory that always seemed slightly too complete. At 1:15 a.m., I smelled fresh bread, but the ovens were off, cold, unlit, still locked from the day shift. Then I saw him, an elderly man standing behind the counter, kneading dough slowly, calmly, like he had always been part of the building. "Did you clock in?" I asked. He nodded without looking up. "Yes," he said softly. "A long time ago." I checked the employee records. No match, no entry, no name, but the dough he was shaping was perfect, too perfect, like it already knew what it was going to become. He worked in silence, never speaking again, only shaping, folding, pressing, like he was remembering recipes instead of following them. At 2:30 a.m., I noticed customers outside, standing by the glass, watching. Some of them looked familiar, but I couldn't place where I knew them from. One of them whispered, "He used to bake for me." Another said, "When I was small." But none of them looked the same age. When morning came, the bakery was empty, but the ovens were warm, and fresh bread was already stacked neatly on trays, still steaming, still waiting, like it had just been finished by someone who refused to leave until everything felt right. The data center never felt alive. Too clean, too precise, too many blinking lights pretending to mean something important. I worked night maintenance checks, mostly system logs, cooling checks, access control. Everything was supposed to be locked down until the typing started. At 12:50 a.m., I heard it. Keyboard sounds. Inside the server room. No one was scheduled inside. No remote access active. Still, typing. Slow. Intentional. Like someone was writing directly into the system itself. I checked the logs. Active sessions. 0. But data was still changing. Files updating. Names appearing in directories that didn't exist before. Then a message appeared on the main terminal. "Don't shut it down." I froze. No sender ID. No system origin. Just text appearing like it had always been there. Another message followed. "You are still listening." I walked toward the server room door, hand hovering near the lock. The typing stopped the moment I got close. Complete silence followed. Too complete, like something was holding its breath. When I opened the door, the room was empty, but every server light was pulsing in sync, as if responding to something I couldn't see. Then the power flickered. Once, twice, and for a second, I heard breathing inside the machines. Not mechanical, not electrical, human. The motel laundry room was always running, even when no one was scheduled to use it. Machines spinning slowly in endless loops, like the building refused to let anything become fully clean. At 1 a.m., I checked the machines. All empty, no loads, no settings active. But every cycle was running anyway. Clothes began appearing, folded, then unfolded, then folded again. Like someone was testing whether time could be reversed through fabric. A man stood near the dryers, calm, careful, sorting clothes that didn't belong to anyone on record. "Don't stop the cycle," he said softly. I asked why. He didn't answer, just continued folding, like the explanation was already happening somewhere else. At 2:30 a.m., one machine started running without water. No intake, no fill, just spinning, dry, silent, like it was practicing washing something that wasn't physical. When I checked the glass door, I saw reflections that didn't match the room, people standing behind me. But when I turned around, only machines, still spinning, still waiting, as if laundry was never the point, only what was trying to erase. The museum at night never truly felt empty. Too many objects inside it still carried attention, even when no one was looking. I worked the overnight security rounds, slow walks through silent halls, checking glass cases, making sure nothing moved that shouldn't. But some things moved anyway, just not in ways cameras could easily explain. At 1:10 a.m., I noticed a first change. A sculpture had shifted slightly, not fallen, not damaged, just rotated, facing a different direction than it had during my last patrol. I checked the logs. No maintenance, no cleaning crew, nothing authorized. The portraits were worse. Their eyes didn't stay fixed anymore. Each time I passed, I felt them adjusting, following, not in unison, but individually aware, like each painting had learned to observe on its own schedule. At 2:05 a.m., I saw a visitor, standing in gallery 4, still, looking at an empty display case. He didn't move when I approached, didn't acknowledge me at all, just studying something that wasn't there. "Sir, we're closed," I said softly. He nodded, but didn't leave. Instead, he replied, "Not for me." I checked visitor logs. No entries, no alarms, no door activations. But the system hesitated when I tried to scan his presence, like it almost recognized him, but refused to confirm it. At 3 a.m., one painting changed. Slowly, subtly, a new figure appeared in the background, standing behind the original subject, looking directly outward, at me, even though I hadn't moved. When I stepped closer, the museum lights dimmed slightly, not broken, not flickering, just lowering, like the building itself was trying to see more clearly. The visitor was gone when I turned around, but the empty display case now contained a faint outline of warmth, like something had been standing there long enough to leave behind an impression. The school at night felt too large for how few people were inside it. Hallways stretching longer than memory, lockers clicking softly without wind, fluorescent lights humming like tired thoughts. I worked as a night janitor, mostly cleaning classrooms, emptying trash, locking doors that never stayed locked for long. At 12:40 a.m., I found him, a student sitting alone in a classroom, writing in a notebook, head down, focused, as if the world outside the room didn't exist. I knocked softly. "School's closed." He didn't look up. "I know," he said, then kept writing. I checked the attendance records. No student assigned to this room. No enrollment under his description. Nothing. But the notebook he was using was already filled with pages dated in the future. Assignments that hadn't been given yet. Questions that hadn't been taught. Answers already completed. At 1:30 a.m., I asked what class he was in. He paused, then said quietly, "The one that hasn't ended yet." I didn't understand that, but something about the way he said it made me stop asking. At 2:45 a.m., I noticed the hallway lights outside the classroom stayed on longer than scheduled. Even after I turned them off, even after I locked the switch, they came back on anyway, one by one, like the school refused to fully sleep. He finally looked up at me. "You stay here every night," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded slowly. He smiled faintly. "Then you'll see it too," he said. Eventually, when morning came, the classroom was empty, but the chalkboard had writing on it. Fresh, still damp, one sentence only. Graduation does not always mean leaving. The phone booth outside the building hadn't worked in years. Glass scratched, paint faded, receiver hanging slightly off its hook. Everyone walked past it like it was just decoration, except at night. It rang, always at night. The first time I heard, it was 2:17 a.m., a sharp ring in the silence. Too clean, too loud for something that old. I approached it carefully, picked up the receiver. Static, then a voice. Where am I supposed to arrive? I froze. "Who is this?" I asked. No answer, just breathing. Soft, uncertain. The line shifted. Then another voice spoke. Not the same one. "This is tomorrow," it said. Then silence again. I checked the booth. Disconnected. No active line. No wiring. But it kept receiving calls. Each night after that, different voices came through. People asking for directions. Not to places, but to times. "I'm late. I can't find the entrance. I think I'm almost there." At 3 a.m., I saw something strange. The booth flickered, like it was slightly out of phase with the rest of the street. Not fully present, not fully absent. Then I heard my own voice. From inside the booth. "Calm, too calm. Are you going to answer it again?" I stepped back immediately, but the booth was empty. Receiver hanging still. No sound. When I checked the logs later, there were no incoming calls recorded, but the system showed something else. Outgoing connection active. From the booth. To nowhere. The first time he arrived, I assumed he was late. New shift worker. Replacement. Someone covering gaps in the schedule. But no one else acknowledged him. Ever. He stood at the entrance every night at exactly 11 p.m., always early, always prepared. Uniform perfect. Badge unreadable. Like the system couldn't decide who he was. "Who are you assigned to?" I asked once. He smiled slightly. "To you," he said. I checked staffing logs. No record of him. No hiring entry. No schedule assignment. But he still showed up every night. Then things started changing. Small at first. Shift notes missing. Logs edited. Break times disappearing from records. As if someone was rewriting the night while it was still happening. At 1:20 a.m., he knew things before I did. "Don't go the west hallway," he said once. I hadn't planned to, but the system log showed I was scheduled to. Until I wasn't. Every correction matched him. Not me, not the system. Him. At 2:50 a.m., I checked the clockout record. My name was gone, replaced with a blank entry labeled. Transferred. No destination listed. I asked him directly, "What is happening?" He looked at me calmly. "You're finishing your shift," he said. "I already started it for you." That was the first time I noticed he wasn't replacing me. He was continuing me. The final shift always felt different. Not because anything changed, but because nothing did. Everything stayed exactly as it was, refusing to move forward properly. I worked alone that night. The building quiet. Lights dim. Air still. Like the night was holding its breath again. Then he arrived. No sound of doors. No footsteps. Just suddenly there. Sitting beside me in the security office like he had always been part of it. "You've met them already," he said softly. I didn't answer. I didn't understand. He looked ahead at the monitors, at empty hallways, at cameras that showed nothing but waiting space. "They don't come at night," he continued. "They are the night." Outside, I checked the window. Darkness. No horizon line. No shift toward dawn. Just endless black that refused to lighten. "You think shifts end," he said quietly, "but they only move to the next person who thinks that." I looked at him. "Who are you?" I asked. He paused, then answered gently. "The part that stays when everyone else leaves." On the monitors, every previous figure appeared at once. The man in the office building, the hotel room, the gas station, the elevator, the hospital corridor, all of them standing still, watching, not from different places, from the same moment. I stood up. The clock stopped responding. The system logs froze. The building stopped updating time entirely. "Morning should be here," I said. He shook his head slightly. "Morning is not scheduled for this place," he replied. The lights outside never changed. No sunrise. No shift in color. Only the same deep, quiet dark that felt less like night and more like permanence. The stranger stood beside me as everything else became still. Not ending. Not continuing. Just holding. And for the first time, I understood the final truth of night shifts. They don't end. They wait for someone else to believe they did.